In this tutorial, I am going to demonstrate to you how to model a chair using simple shapes and lines. Let's start by drawing up a box using the geometry, standard primitives, and box function here, and to just draw a box here. Okay, and typically a chair is about 450 by 450 by 450 in millimeters. So what we're going to do is we are going to change this one to 450, 450, and 450. So this would almost become the minimum size of a chair at that. Okay, and we want to raise the height a little bit so that this height becomes a little bit like a backrest. So I'm just going to change this figure to 600 this way. So in this case, the chair would become bigger and not smaller than this volume here. Okay, so like that. And the next thing I like to do is I like to always align the basic geometry to a center first, so it becomes easier to rotate as well as to view the model later on. Okay, so I'm going to use the move command here, right click to call out the move transform type in, and just put them to 0, 0, 0. Alright, and with this I would raise the height of the volume at this point here to 450, 450 here, so that we know that this seating placement here it's going to be 450 from the ground plane here. Alright, this way. Okay, there you go. That's our basic volume here. Next, I'm going to add a modifier stack to it. Alright, I can do this by right clicking and converting it into an editable poly, or I can do it the command stack method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the command stack method this way. So you will be able to see progressively how we get to the ultimate form we want to achieve. Okay, so I'm going to click on this and look for edit poly command here. You'll find that now a new command has been stacked on top of this. Alright, so I'm going to expand this now and go to the polygon subselection mode, and I will begin to remove these faces here, leaving only this one and this one here. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in delete. So there you go, this way. And you find that one of the faces here will appear proper colored in cyan, and then when I reverse this, and I'll see this in black. This is because the 3D Studio Max is trying to show us that this is the underside, or this is the other side of the normals. Okay, so normally what we can do is we can select these two polygon faces, and then let me minimize this. I always like to see them, all these headers being minimized, so I know what I'm doing. So under the edit polygons header here, we can click on flip to be able to flip it to the correct side this way, like that. Next, we are going to build some curvature to this chair itself, but we cannot do that without subdividing the faces here. So I'm going to expand this view now, and I'm going to subdivide these faces. How to go about doing this would be, I will use the edge selection mode here, this one, and select one edge, two edges here. So I will select these two edges, and with this I will click on if I click on connect, you'll notice that if I click on one connect here, it will only subdivide this into two parts like that. Okay, I'm going to undo this by keying in Ctrl Z. Now I'm going to click on the box that says settings beside it, this one, and you will find that I can now begin to select the number of subdivisions I need. I'm going to go with 6 at the moment for this. and then I'm going to click OK here. I'm going to do the same for this one as well here, and click on the settings next to the connect button and keep it at 6. Now notice 3D Studio Max will remember your last defined setting here. So if we key in 6 previously, it's going to use the same value here as well. And I'm going to click OK. So it's going to look something like that. Alright. And next, on top of this, I now have the horizontal subdivisions here, but I'm going to need some vertical subdivisions as well here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to window or crossing select these to select all these horizontal lines here, these edges here, and I'm going to click on connect again, the settings box right besides connect, and with this again I will keep it at 6 subdivision parts and click OK. So I have me something that looks like that now. Alright. And next, I'm going to add another command stack to this. But before doing this, I'm going to click on the Edge button here again, this Edge subselection mode again, so that I can go back to the top down here. For new users trying to use the Edit Poly command, many a times they are very confused about this part here, and they will tend to just leave this one alone, and it causes problems later on. So it is always good practice that after we are done with the sub-selection modes, we want to be moving up to the top down here before issuing new command modifiers to it. Okay, so next what we're going to do is I am going to use the FFD 4x4x4 command down here. So FFD essentially means freeform deformation. Alright, the 4x4x4 essentially just means it's going to divide, it's going to create a lattice cage which is 4 parts. 4 parts horizontal, 4 parts vertical, and 4 parts in the z-axis here. Alright, so let me just click on this and show you what happens here. So it's going to look something like this, like a cage itself, a lattice cage. And with the lattice cage itself, we will click on this triangle here that would allow us to expand the sub-selection modes. And then we are going to click on control points here. And with this control points, it will now allow us to make some very subtle corrections or adjustments to the form here. I'm going to start with, let's say, pulling up this. So I can raise it a little bit higher so we can achieve that little subtle curve at this point. And I'm going to stretch this one out a little bit more as well here, this chair. And perhaps I'm going to rotate this one a little bit and select them here. And with this, I'm going to use the scale command. Alright, the scale command here, and I can now change this profile a little bit here by scaling it in one single axis here, this way, like that. Alright, and then I'm going to just rotate this one a little bit also, and select these control points here, these control points down here as well. Okay, this one, and I'm going to change to the move command, and I'll be able to just simply pull this one out to give us a little bit more depth to it. So you find that it's a bit curvy this way, and I'm going to do the same for the seating base as well. So I'm just going to adjust it by pulling it down a little bit more here, like that. Okay, and usually chairs doesn't appear so vertical this way. So what we can do is we are going to adjust it backwards a little bit, this side. Okay, so I'm just going to adjust this by pulling it back a little bit and pulling this one a little bit more and pulling this one way back a little bit more this way as well. Alright, some adjustments this way depending on how much we want to, how pronounced we want the curvature to be, like this here. Okay, like something like that, and then I'm going to do the same also for the seating base as well of the chair. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to raise this one up a little bit and then raise this one up a little bit more also, like that. So now it looks quite curvish this way, like that, this way. Okay, and then perhaps I want to express the outward curvature of the corners here, of the edges of the left and the right. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the control key and select these four cage points here, these 4 control points here. Alright, let me just highlight to you this one, this one, this one, and this one. So I'm holding on to the control key and adding on to my selection this way. And once I'm done with this, I will use the scale command and then I will be able to pull this one out this way. Again, this one requires a little bit of a visual assessment of how much you want this to be, okay, this way. Alright, and then we can do the same for these points here as well, these 4 points down here as well, like that. Alright, these 4 corner cage points here, yeah, and you find that once we do this, we will also similarly be able to stretch these out as well, like that. Okay, so there you go, we've got more or less the form of the chair up this way. Now some small little areas here to touch up a little bit to increase that curvature, okay, like that. So let's say if we are quite happy with the way how it works out already, and I think that will be quite nice at this point. So we got to think of a way to round off these corners down here, okay, this part. Now with this, what's going to happen is I'm going to try to use the edit poly command stack on top of this command now. So notice if we now change this, you can now begin to see if we switch off all these modifier, it goes back to being a box. And then after that, when we activate this command here, it becomes a subdivided L face. And thereafter, we activate the FFD 4x4 modifiers, you find that it now becomes a whole lot curvier. And then now we're going to try to activate this by curving it off. Okay, there are many ways to achieve the same outcome here. Alright, so one of this way, the easier way to do it would be, I'm going to just go to the vertex selection mode here, and I'm just going to click on these, okay, and simply just do a shift. Okay, just move it down a little bit, and then from here do a scale inwards this way, like that here. So it creates that illusion of that little curve down here as well. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing for this corner down here as well. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale it in first, and then use the move command and move it along the y-axis down here, so it achieves that little curvature down here as well, this way. Alright, and once this part of the work is done, alright, let me just move this a little bit so that it visually looks a little bit better, like that. Okay, I'm just going to shift this, just a little bit of fine-tuning work down here to get done. Yeah. So yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with the effects already, this way, like that. So we more or less achieved the main part of this curvature here, but you know, because there's not enough subdivisions to it, so it tends to look a little bit more faceted in this case. Alright, so what we are going to do is, we go back to the top level now. We are going to add another command here called Turbosmooth, starting with T, yeah? Under here called Turbosmooth. So what Turbosmooth really does is, it actually subdivides from one of these faces here. If we change the iteration to 1, you will find that it now changes, it now doubles it or subdivides it by half to achieve the subdivided smoothness here. Then obviously if we increase this one to 2, then it subdivides that subdivision into furthermore. Alright, but we've got to be very careful with the amount of subdivisions we go, because each time we change this, the faces multiply exponentially. We can see this one quite clearly by pressing the 7 key. Alright, the number 7 key will see this. So if you look at this right now, at an iteration of 3, we are looking at 12,544 faces. But if we change this one to 2, however, you find that the faces now drop to 3,136 faces here. If we drop this further by 1, for example, now it becomes 784 faces. If we drop it back to 0, which is the original condition here, you find that its original condition, the face here, it's only about 196 faces. So I'm quite happy with just leaving it at the iteration of, say, 1 down here. And there you go. It looks pretty smooth to me already this way. Okay, like that. So this is the first part here. Alright, and there are a couple of ways we can make this chair look more interesting. Alright, I'm just going to make a clone of it now to save it and show you the iteration. Alright, so I am just going to leave it at this, and then under the move command, right, I'm going to press the Ctrl V key. This will allow me to create a copy, an instance, or a reference. So I'm just going to use this copy mode and make a copy of this, and I'm going to right click and call out the move transform type in, so that I can move this one precisely 1 meter across here. Alright, so I'm going to key in 1000, so that's 1 meter like this. Okay, now the next thing is, we can give it thickness simply by using this command here. Okay, so I'm going to select this chair here as a variation, and I'm going to use the shell command here, shell, and under the shell command here, I am going to give it, let's say, an outer thickness of 20, for example, and you'll find that it now moves upwards by 20 thickness here, this way. Alright, or we can invert this and use the other variation by clicking on 20 for the inner part. So what happens is, it is actually moving it downwards rather than upwards here. Alright, so it depends on what kind of situation we need to apply it in. So in this case, I would just use this as at 20 for the inner anyway, this part here. Okay, so now you see that we now have thickness like a plywood for this chair itself. Okay, this chair surface. This is variation number 1. Alternatively, we can change it. We can use another strategy for this to create that wireframe chair look, simply by using the, under the drop down list here, we look for lattice here. So once we click on lattice, you will find that it now achieves this. So let me just show you a more pronounced example by changing the radius to, say, 10. Alright, so let's take a closer look at this now. At this, if we click on joints only, what happens is it will create a series of knots down here at the junction, at the joints. So we do not want this, but we will change this one to struts itself. So by changing it to struts, it now becomes like a wireframe itself. But except this wireframe is not very refined because there are only 4 faces to it. So what happens is we can change the sides from 4 to say 12, and then you find that it refines it a lot more. We can obviously make it more by increasing it to say 16 faces. You'll find that it now looks a lot more roundish or smoother. We can also choose to smooth it a little bit. Okay, so it smooths the things out and so on this way. Okay, like that, huh? And we can obviously also change the radius of the struts by changing it to say 5. So this will become a 10 unit or 10 mm wide strut lines here this way. Okay, so we can make this part even smaller by changing it to say 2.5. Now it's really fine this way, like that. Okay, I'm quite happy to just leave it at 5 for now. Next, we are going to need to do a little bit of cleaning up this way here if it is very obvious down at this point. Okay, alright, you find that if we activate the end caps here, it will look something like this, huh? Like that. Alright, but if there is a need for us to clean this one up, what we can do is we would be able to add another edit poly stack to it, and with this we will go and change to the border subselection mode here, and we will be able to window select these 2 border. Basically, border selection mode is selecting the edge of open edges of the faces down here, alright, this way. And with this we can click on bridge to hook up or link up the broken faces here. Notice once we click on the bridge command here, it will join up. Alright, but the trouble with this is it also creates potentially rendering problems because the faces now look like they are inverted on the inside here. So this is something you really want to be paying attention to when you're modeling this, whether or not these details matter to you. Okay, if it is causing problems, then this is the area you want to be paying attention. Okay, and I'm just going to do a few here, alright, just to demonstrate to you how it would work. So I'm just going to look at these again one more time, select these, window select in border selection mode, alright, and with this I will click on bridge to close these up. And down here as well, I'm going to select these and click on bridge to close up, and similarly as well, select these to bridge it to close these up as well. And there you go, we have the main part of this wireframe sitting chair here this way. Okay, next I'm going to show you how to create the legs itself, the chair's legs. Alright, so we are going to change ourselves to here, the left view down here. Okay, so the left view, this is now the key reason why during the box stage, at the box stage, I want to be raising it up nicely at 450 mm, because right down here, after the form has been created, it becomes a little bit difficult to define the height without missing out too much here. So we want to retain a certain degree of accuracy. So that's why we want to be raising it at the box stage here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a very simple trapezoidal leg form here this way. So under the shapes selection mode, and I'm just going to use the line command here to simply just key in these points down here. Okay, like that. Alright, something like this. And I want to close the spline. So once we have this already, you now see that we have the elevational view of it here. So it's going to look something like this at this stage. Doesn't really matter at this point because we need to get them to the correct alignment right now. So with this, we're going to go to the modifier, and under the line we will expand the subselection modes again to go into the vertex mode, and I'm just going to adjust all of this to the side first. Okay, so I'm going to adjust it so I will get to close to the corner down here as a reference point. Okay, and then with this I will now select this point here so that I can now adjust it closer to one side down here and adjust it inwards to, let's say, let it reach or touch the corner points here. So I will use this intersection edge as the location point here, and I'm going to go back to this one now and look for a good location so that it can be, you know, in real world construction terms, it can be probably anchored or welded nicely here. Okay, somewhere down at this point here. So I will raise it up, hopefully. We see somewhere close to this down here, this point. So we should be using this point instead. Alright, so let's take a look here and see if we can achieve close to this point here. Alright, like that. So similarly here, I'm going to raise this one up elevationally so that it touches. Otherwise, this 3D model doesn't quite make sense. So I'm just going to get real close to it and see. At this point right here, right now, the grids are becoming a visual distraction. So I'm just going to press the G key to just hide the grids now, so that I can see this one quite closely here. Alright, so I'm just going to move this one to here, like that. Alright, so there you go. This is roughly the points down here, yeah? And then we want to spread the base of the leg so that it looks like it's a little bit more stable in that sense. So I'm just going to select this point here and shift it outwards this way. But I don't want to overdo it in the sense that elevationally it is so far protruded out. So I just want to raise it so that it is more or less in line with the part down here. So if I were to draw a line to compare, right, I will almost have this almost in line here, like that. So I'll just shift this one out a little bit, and then the base as well, I will just adjust this one out. How much further out? I would say I would use again this part as a reference. So I will just use this one as a close reference. I think I'll just want to have this somewhere around this point here. Will do, using the corner here as a reference. All right, this way. So I'm going to end up with something like this. Okay, so once this part is done, we can look at changing or altering the line or modifying the line edges a little bit so that it becomes a lot more refined. Okay, so how to do this? We can simply, okay, I'm going to add another, go back to the top level again. I will add another command stack called edit spline here, because I don't want to really ruin this. I can switch it off later on if I find that the mistake is too much or I really want to refine it further. Alright, and with this, what's going to happen is I will expand this and click on the vertex subselection mode, and with this I want to be rounding off the edges here. Yeah, so I will select this one vertex point and this second vertex point here. And what I'm going to do is, let me just minimize all this so that it's easier for us to see. Under geometry, alright, I'm going to click on fillet. Okay, under fillet here, and I'm going to drag and pull out a fillet this way. And by doing this, the numbers will be shown here. Notice when I drag up, the number increases, so we can roughly gauge and establish a certain number that will look nice enough to form the fillet radius. Alright, I think just to make the numbers look good, I'm going to undo this now, and I'm going to use the 50 number here, this one, so it looks something like this. And once I'm done, I am going to select the ones on top as well, and try to establish to see whether we can get a nice fillet number also down here at this point. Okay, but before I do this, all right, notice there is a curvature to the seating, the seat's base. All right, the chair's base here. So prior to doing this, I don't want to ruin what is at the base down here already. So I'm just going to add another command stack. Okay, so I'm just going to click on Editable Spline one more time. In case I ruin this, I still can save the rounding base below. All right. So with this, what's going to happen is I'm going to go to the vertex selection mode here, and I'm going to click on refine, and then click on refine here, and click on refine, so that I can add another point down here. And by doing so, once I change this to a command, move command, and I can click on this now and raise this one up to get a certain degree of curvature down here. All right, so I can do something like this here. All right, so I'm just going to get closer to it without touching it too much, and a little bit of adjustment here, a little bit of y-axis adjustment, so I can get somewhere close to this and then pull it down somehow like that. All right, like that. And with this now at this stage, I will select the two vertex points here and work on my fillet here, okay, so that I can still retain the slight little curvature down here. All right, so I'm just going to look at this and study what kind of curvature will be looking good. I think 35 looks quite nice, so I'm just going to change this one to 35 here, this way. All right, like that. And finally, I'm just going to change this point by right-clicking it and changing it to a Bezier. So this Bezier would allow me to adjust the little curvature down here as well. Okay, I'm just going to select this and adjust this so that it looks a little bit more curved as well, just like that. Very, very subtle, but that will be how it is done, or how I would do it. Okay, and then with this also, yeah, with this I can actually adjust this curvature out also this way, like that. Okay, if I wanted to, this way. Like that. Okay, so let's take a look at it right now. So there you go, it looks something like this at this point here. Okay, now with this done already, we can quite easily change these lines to a renderable geometry. Okay, so how do we do this? Simply, we can use the lattice command again, lattice command here, and then we can, with this again, we can simply increase the number of sides to make it curvier to, let's say, from 4, right? If you look at 4, it's just very, very crude here. So we're going to change it to a more refined state, which is at 16, and then we will just use the struts without the joints, okay, this way. And then with this, we are simply going to just change the radius to, let's try 10 to see if it's oh, it looks too thick already. I'm just going to use, let's say, 5 this way, like that. And then I would have this quite nicely done. Okay, and obviously we can close up all these gaps here by clicking on Editable Poly and then changing it to border selection mode and selecting these faces here. Alright, so just to make sure I can see them clearly, I will select these borders and then bridge them. Select and bridge. A little bit tedious because of the curvature here, right? This way. Okay. So we got to select them pair by pair, alright? This way. And then to bridge them. Just like that. Same thing on this side as well. So I'll just breach them to close up the geometry. This way. And finally, we work a little bit on the top as well, right? Here. Just to close up these open faces, all right? We cannot do a window select at one time because Max 3D Studio Max will not know where you want to bridge from which point to which point. All right, so that's why it gets a little bit tedious when we have to do this one by one here. Okay, before I make any mistakes, I better save them first. So I'm just going to do a save as now, and to just drop them into the proper folders first. Yeah, so just hold on a minute here. I'm going to look for this one. And I'm just gonna put them here, okay? Just share and save them. Alright, so with this now, I'm going to go back to border selection mode again, right? And then select these again and then continue to bridge them also. These are really quite, we can't really quite see it, so I'm just going to leave these alone and keep it this way like that. Okay, so once I'm done with this, the next step to do it would be to simply just mirror these, okay? This is the key reason why I like to model in the center of spaces. It will be a whole lot easier to define the center. So I'm just going to select this one here and go to Edit and look for I'm just going to go to Tools and then look for Mirror here. Okay, so mirror here would be down this side. Alright, but then you know, once I mirror this by default and then it switches over, then I don't have my previous copy. So I just want to make sure I select copy here. Alright, so I have the other one on this side as well. Or I would simply just use instance anyway. It will be the same. So I'll click OK this way, like that. And there you go, the chair is up. Alright, and to just copy this one over, I will simply just click on move, right? And then what I'll do is I'll just, I will hold the shift key and then drag them across this way. Or if I want to move them precisely, what I'll do is I will call out the control. I will right click to call out the move transform type in, and then do a Control C to clone a copy, okay, and then move them by Z-axis by 1000 units here. And there you go, I have the two chairs down here. Now, because this one, right, because I, just now during the shell command, I moved this downwards, so right now we notice that there are some overlapping problems down here with the faces. The easy way to resolve this would be, under the shell command, instead of the inner amounts, right, I'm going to change this one to 0, and then I'm going to change this to outer amounts 0 as well. Then we will not have this problem down here, this way, okay, like that. And once this part of the work is done, right, we can quite simply click on render, and then we will see the geometries being this way already, like that. So there you go. simple model, very easy to achieve this way, but you can achieve quite nice, quite curvish models using the lines and simple edit poly method and technique here. Okay, like this. Okay guys, do try it out.